In the days in which we live, there is a lot of talk about fake news. Do I really know that this source is reliable? Is there a way to really know if this is true, if this is actually real? And in the time that we live, there seems to be a lot of fake news. It doesn't matter what news source that you like. It seems that all news sources seem to have been making a lot more mistakes, more now than lately, or more now than before. But on top of that, we live in an age where there is the internet, and anybody can write anything that they want, whether it's real or not. That's why when you find something on the internet, you know it's true. That's how you can know. It's on the internet. It has to be true. But it's not. There are now websites dedicated to satire, where creative writers write completely fake stories just to get people to laugh. And it's always cracks me up because there's a few Christian ones that talk about churches and things that are going on that is completely fake. But they write it where it almost could be real, where people share it and they talk bad about other ministries and churches because of these fake stories. Can you believe that they did this? This church is of the devil. And it's not even real. It's completely made up, completely fake. So in the day in which we live, how can we be certain that the story that we're going to look at today is not just another fake news article, another fake story? How can we know that the story is real? That this could be true? How can we know? It's hard to tell, isn't it, whether a story is true or real. To prove it to you, I brought in a few stories I want to share with you. And I want you to be able to yell back at me if you think it's real or fake. Are you ready for this? Here's the first one. Here's the headlines. Laughing epidemic affects several thousand people and lasts almost a year. Real or fake? What do you think? It's real. You were wrong. It's completely real. Listen to the article. It says this: an epidemic of laughing lasted almost a year. And this laughing broke out in what is now Tanzania in 1962. Several thousand people were affected, like they were infected. They were affected by this across several villages in Tanzania. It forced a school to close because both students and teachers alike couldn't stop laughing. But the article goes on to say it wasn't all fun and games, though, because other symptoms followed the laughing. Symptoms included crying, fainting, pains in the stomach from laughing so hard, and rashes. I think that's hilarious. It's like, hey, how'd you get that rash? I was laughing so hard, man, broke out in hives. It's a true story. Many of us would think, that can't be real. It's real. How about this one? Tell me if you think this one's real or fake. The first video ever uploaded to YouTube had to be taken down in 2016 for violating their terms and service agreement. Fake. Wrong again. And you notice that time only like 3 people were like, true? It's actually fake. What about this one? Scientists discover a new species of bacteria that live in hairspray. Real or fake? It's real. It's real. You're 0 for 3. Now that you find that out and there's new species of bacteria in hairspray, it may make you want to reconsider your choice of hair product this morning. Oh man, I wish I would have put all that extra hairspray in my hair for Easter. I should have came like I did out of bed. All right, last one. Real or fake? Pastor Brenen is the most handsome pastor ever to live. Also true. Also true. I'm kidding. Some of you don't appreciate my humor. That's okay. Whether you realize it or not, that is epic level preacher humor. That is at the top of its game. God liked that joke. Anyways, it's hard to tell whether news is real or fake. Is this story true or false? But not only in the day that we live in is it difficult because of the fake news, but today is the day that we as a nation call April Fool's Day. It's April 1st. First. I'm from Boston. That was horrible. I can't do accents unless it's on accident, and then I can do accents. It's April 1st today. April 1st, April Fool's Day, where we as a nation rally together to believe nothing and trust no one. That should be the motto of April 1st. We believe nothing and trust no one. Why? Because we know there's all these April Fool's pranks. My family and I love April Fool's pranks. It's one of my favorite days of the year just because of the pranks. I've gotten in a lot of trouble growing up doing April Fool's pranks. Like the time that I put some Kool-Aid powder inside the shower nozzle and then screwed it back into my parents' shower. And so when they would go to turn it on, Kool-Aid would come out. I thought it would be a harmless joke. I didn't know Kool-Aid stained. But April Fool's is great. And do you know this is the first time since 1956 that Easter has fallen on April Fool's Day, April 1st? And it will only happen one more time in this next century. So you better take advantage of this one opportunity, this one day that you get to pull out all the Easter April Fools. Here's a few suggestions for you. Tell your kids it's time for the Easter egg hunt and tell them, all right, go find them before you ever hide the eggs. Just a suggestion for one. And then when you actually hide the eggs, I would encourage you, instead of stuffing it with candy and chocolate and coins and money like you normally would do, stuff it with like old veggies, like broccoli, green beans. So when they find all their eggs, they're all excited. They get all their eggs. Okay, all the eggs are found. They open it up. Oh, that might be more morbid. Maybe don't do that one. Or this is my favorite. Take the little chocolate Easter eggs, the little ones, and unwrap them, eat the chocolate, or save it, either one. And then take grapes and take the foil and rewrap all the little mini Easter eggs and wrap grapes with them. So that way you can just tell them, we wanted you to be healthy this Easter. And if you have older children or adult children still living at home, listen, it's time to stop buying them Easter baskets. But this year can be the last year though. Buy them an Easter basket, but instead of filled with goodies and candy and stuff, fill it with cleaning supplies. And tell them it's time for spring cleaning. Did you know Easter brings about spring? Yeah, so it's time for spring cleaning. Get to work, start pulling your weight around the house. Can I get an amen from some parents with some adult children? And I just lost every college-age person in my church. I'm never coming back here again. Today is Easter, the day that we celebrate the resurrection of Jesus Christ. But how can we know for certain that Jesus is who he said he is? How can we know that Jesus truly is alive? How can we know that? How do we know that's not some fake news? Or how do we know that's not some April Fool's joke? Like the ultimate April Fool's joke, like the first one ever was, hey, let's steal Jesus' body and pretend that he came back to life and tell everybody else that he's alive when he's really dead and we hid him somewhere else. How do we know that's not the case? Well, you see, Jesus, as we pick up in our story in Matthew chapter 27, he's been crucified on the cross. And then Pilate gave permission to Joseph of Arimathea to take Jesus' body upon request and bury Jesus' body in a tomb near that site. And so Joseph of Arimathea took Jesus' body and he put him in the tomb. But there were some religious leaders who were responsible for putting Jesus to death. And they wanted to make sure Jesus stayed that way. We killed Jesus, we want Jesus to stay dead. And so they went to Pilate and they asked Pilate for permission to be able to secure the tomb. The reason why? John chapter 2, verse 27. Jesus claimed in John chapter 2, verse 27, he said it this way. When people were asking him, how do we know that you're really God? How do we know that you're truly the Son of God? How do we know you are who you say you are? For you see, Jesus claimed to be God. People say, oh, you know what, Jesus, he's a good teacher. Other religions say, well, he was a prophet from God, but he's not God. Some people say, well, he was a good rabbi, had great teachings, but we don't believe that he was God. Listen, you can't believe that Jesus was good without believing that Jesus was God. Because Jesus claimed to be God. He told people, he taught that he was the Son of God. He claimed to be God. So Jesus is either the Son of God or Jesus is a lunatic. It's either one or the other. It's not both. Jesus Christ either was God in the flesh or a crazy man. Well, how do we know the difference? Well, the religious leaders knew that Jesus, when he was asked that question, how do we know you are who you say you are? How do we know you're God? He says this, put it up on the screens, John chapter 2. He says this to people that ask that question. John chapter 2, verse 19. Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will rise it up. I will raise that temple. John says he was talking about himself. Destroy this temple, this body, and in 3 days I will raise it back to life again. Here's the one proof. Are you ready for it? Jesus says, I'll give you one proof that will be undeniable. That I am who I say I am, that you know my claims, that you can believe my teachings, that you can believe when I say that I am the Son of God, that I am the Son of God. Here's how you'll know. When they kill me, I will bring my body back to life 3 days later. You see, everything that Jesus taught is based upon the reality and the validity of the resurrection. If there is no resurrection, then Jesus was a lunatic. If there is a resurrection, then everything that Jesus said is true. So everything we believe is based off of that event, the resurrection of Jesus Christ. It all revolves around the resurrection. And so the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the religious leaders, they knew that. So they wanted to make sure Jesus didn't come back from the grave. They wanted to make sure it didn't happen. So they go to Pilate and they say, listen, Jesus, he said that he's going to come back to life. We really don't want that to happen. We want to make sure he stays dead. And we want to make sure that his followers don't come and try to steal the body. And so they come to Pilate, and that's where we pick up in our story. In verse 64 or 62, the next day on the Sabbath, the leading priests and the Pharisees went to see Pilate. They told him, Sir, we remember what the deceiver once said while he was still alive. You better be careful when you call the one who is defined as truth the deceiver. The deceiver in the Bible is referenced to Satan. Now they're calling Jesus the deceiver when they were the ones being deceptive. Oh, I could teach a whole message on how a lot of times people try to prove their points that's not reality by saying someone else is a liar. That's what they were doing. And they go to Pilate, the leader, and they say, remember what he once said, that when he was still alive, after 3 days, I will rise from the dead. So we request that you seal the tomb until the 3rd day. This will prevent his disciples from coming and stealing his body and then telling everyone he was raised from the dead. If that happens, we'll be worse off than we were at first. So here's the religious leaders. Jesus, they knew Jesus claimed as the validity of his ministry of who he said he was, destroy my body, I will come back to life 3 days later. So the religious leaders say, we want to seal the tomb to make sure the disciples don't come and try to steal the body and then say, oh, he came back to life. Look, the tomb is empty. Because now more people will know for sure the validity of Jesus' ministry. And so too today, more people can know Jesus Christ when they see the tomb is empty. They had that fear. They didn't want more people to know Jesus, to experience Jesus. So Pilate replied, take guards and secure it the best you can. Now, if you really want something to be secure and you are now given the authority and the power and the resources to secure it, you know it's going to be really secure. They're going to make sure they do a really good job. And so they sealed the tomb and posted guards to protect it. Now they took every precaution to make sure Jesus didn't come back from the grave. And so it says that they took guards. You might want to write this down, number one. They placed a guard. Now that word guard in the Greek is custodia. And I only say that so that you know I'm pretty knowledgeable. No, I'm kidding. I say that because the word custodia is in the Roman Empire describes a guard of men, a group of men that would be fearless. They were the ones that would go into anything and stand their ground no matter what would come their way. These were fearless, trained men. It also describes the amount of men. Minimum, it would have been 16 men, but most scholars believe it would be around 64 fearless Roman guards. And they would guard it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, but they only had to do it for 3 days. But it would be around the clock guarding. They would take shifts and they would stand guard to make sure that if anybody tried to come, they had the power to eliminate that life to protect what was in this tomb. And also, if you were a Roman guard, part of a custodia, part of that guard, if whatever you were protecting, you weren't unable to protect, you would have to pay the price with your life. If you ran from your guard, or you were fearful and you ran, or said, forget it, it's not worth it because of the opposition, you would pay for that penalty. The price would be your life. So these men, these were fearless men, these were strong men, these were trained men. And these men would be standing guard. Pilate is saying, I'm going to give you whatever you need to make sure that there's no fake news going around. Not only did they place the guard, but number two, it says that they sealed the tomb. Sealed the tomb. Now, when it talks about sealing the tomb, it's not talking about, some Gorilla Glue. They glued the stone on there. The stone would have been, weighing about as much as your Honda Accord. A little over 2,000 pounds. It would have been an incredibly heavy stone, between 2,000 pounds and 2 tons. A huge stone. So the stone would be rolled over in front of the opening of the tomb. But what the seal is talking about, this word for seal is sphragizo. Now try to say sphragizo. Like 3 people tried it. You gotta try it. Sphragizo. The reason why I want you to say that is because when you go to your Easter parties after service today and you're at lunch, you can say, oh yeah, sphragizo, and they'll be like, what in the world is that? And you might not even remember. You can make something up. It's Greek. It's Greek because they won't even know what it is. But what that word is talking about, the seal, is the seal of the Roman court of law. They would seal a package. If Rome had something they wanted to ensure that the contents were inside of that container, a Roman official from the Roman court would come, inspect the crate or the container, confirm that it was inside. They would put the lid on it and then seal it with a crimson rope, a crimson cord, and then place wax there, put the cord in the wax, and then over the wax, stamp it with the Roman seal. That seal stood for the power and authority of Rome. It was the power, the world power at that time, going on record, saying that the contents are inside. We've inspected it, we've verified it, it will uphold in a court of law. So that if you received a package and the seal was broken, you could say, the seal is broken, I'm going to refuse that package, I won't accept it. Kind of like when UPS or FedEx or USPS, I'm not going to say which one, but when they deliver the package that's just thrashed and ripped open and the contents are damaged inside, you can say, I am not going to receive this in its current condition. But if that seal was there, if it was intact, you could know, okay, the contents are inside. It's guaranteed by Roman law. And if you were the one to break that seal without written permission that was granted to you to be the one to open the seal, your punishment would also be death in a humiliating and embarrassing way. They would crucify you upside down, naked, in front of your society, in front of your community. So no one would dare to mess with the power of Rome. No one would dare to open up that tomb. And now the religious leaders, they thought it was a done deal. There's a guard in front of it, the power of Rome over the tomb, over the stone, because they would take a crimson cable and stamp wax on both sides of the stone, so if the stone was moved, it would break the seal. No one would dare move the stone, and it would guarantee to the world that its contents were inside. Everything was a sealed tight situation. But then the third day happens. Look at Matthew 28. Early on Sunday morning, it's today, as the new day was dawning, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary went out to visit the tomb. Suddenly there was a great earthquake, for an angel of the Lord came down from heaven, rolled aside the stone, and sat on it. His face shone like lightning, and his clothing was as white as snow. The guards shook with fear when they saw him, and they fell into a dead faint. Now catch the scene. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary, they're on their way to the gravesite to put some flowers at the tomb. They were on their way there to do some ceremonies like people do today. They go to grave sites and they put flowers on the tomb. They were on their way to the gravesite. And now there's an angel in heaven watching this. And he sees the two Marys walking to the tomb, and they're almost there. They're just about to get there, and the angel's thinking, oh, no, no, no. The tomb is still covered. The stone is still there. It still has the seal on it, proclaiming to the world that the contents are still inside. But Jesus Christ, we know, on the third day rose to life, but Jesus wasn't in the tomb anymore. But nobody would know because the stone was still in front of the tomb. And they're going to get there, and they're going to think, oh, Jesus is still in there. It says by the power of Rome, the contents are still inside, so, they'll never know. So what do I do? What do I do? Where's Jesus? Where's Jesus? Oh, he's still on earth. Oh, shoot, what do I do? I got to do something. And it says that the angel bolts down to heaven, and he lands on the ground, and when he hits the ground, an earthquake shatters. He came down quick. And the earth literally shakes, and an earthquake happens, a sonic boom perhaps. And he takes the huge 2-ton stone and he rolls it aside, breaking the power of Rome, the authority of Rome, the seal of Rome. He breaks the seal. And then what does he do? He sits on the stone. I love that. What's up, boys? What are you going to do about it? And it says that these fearless Roman guards, perhaps 64 in number, maybe more, are standing there, and they're looking at this angel whose face shined like lightning. These fearless men fall into a dead faint, and they pass out, completely out, just in time for Mary Magdalene, the other Mary, to turn the corner. Oh, look, what happened here? The stone is rolled away, and the angel then gives a word of invitation. Look at verse 5. Then the angel spoke to the women. Don't be afraid, he said. I know you're looking for Jesus, who was crucified. He isn't here. He is risen from the dead, just as he said would happen. Come, see where the body would lay. Catch the scene. Whoever rolls the stone away is going to be put to death by the power and authority of Rome. The angel comes, rolls the stone, doesn't even fight with the men, just looks at them. They pass out. The tomb that was sealed, saying the contents are inside of this, the angel rolls away. Oftentimes we think of the stone needing to be rolled away to let Jesus out. Like Jesus was in there all morning alive. It's the third day, everybody. Let me out of here. God the Father, could you send an angel down to help me? You know, I did a lot of working out over the last 3 days on the CrossFit. And so, like, the stone, it's heavy. Could someone move this for me? Jesus didn't need the stone to be rolled away to get out of there. He didn't need that. We know that because later the Gospels will tell us that Jesus appeared to his disciples when they were in a room with the windows and doors locked. And he just appeared to them. And he appeared to other people. He was supernaturally appearing to people at different times. He could walk through walls. He didn't need the stone to be rolled away. Listen, the stone wasn't rolled away to let Jesus out. The stone was rolled away because we are given an invitation to come in. Come look, come and see. The body is no longer here. Come and see for yourself. And that's the same invitation that I want to give you today. Come and see for yourself that Jesus is alive. Come and see that he is not here. The angel told them, and it's what we are here, church, to celebrate today. He tells them, he is not here, he is risen. That's what we're celebrating today. He's alive. Death could not hold him. The grave could not keep him. He is alive. And so there's an invitation to come and see for yourself, personally. Now the women came back and they told the men. And people would say, well, maybe the women made this story up. Maybe they were the ones that stole. Oh, yeah, 2 little ladies take out 64 guards, roll a 2-ton stone away. But if that was even true, the gospel writers wouldn't have recorded it that way if it was all a lie. For you see, in that day, in that culture, women's votes, women's accounts, women's testimonies were considered null and void in legal courts. Even if there was 20 women that all said it's true, and one man said it was true, or wasn't true, and one man said it was true, we're going with the man. The Gospels, wherever the message of Jesus Christ went out throughout the world, it always brought equality to race and to mankind. Equality. Jesus brings us all into equal level because we're all sinners that fall short of God's glory. So if these women were just making this story up and it was all a lie, the men wouldn't have wrote it that way. They would have said, we went and saw for ourselves, because Peter and John raced to the tomb after they came back and said, the body's not there. We know from John's account that Peter and John then went racing to the tomb from the room that they were locked in to see for themselves. And I like how John records in his gospel that he beat Peter there. We were both running as fast as we could. I won. And they saw it for themselves. But you might say, well, how do I know today? How can I know for certain that Jesus is alive? Well, you can go to Israel with me and look at the tomb if you want to. It's empty. You can see for yourself. Well, how do I know that Jesus is who he said he is? Quickly, to close, I want to give you 3 things. 3 reasons, 3 proofs of the resurrection. First, there's witnesses turned martyrs. Witnesses of Jesus' resurrection that were willing to give their lives. You see, on the first Easter Sunday, there was no debate about if the tomb was empty or not. Everyone on that Easter Sunday knew the tomb was empty. The religious leaders did, so they went and they paid the Roman guards to say that they fell asleep. And when they fell asleep, Jesus' disciples came and stole the body. So they were paid off to say that that was their story, which is the dumbest story in the world. Here's why. 64 guards all falling asleep at the same time when it would cost them their life if they fell asleep and didn't guard what was inside. Really? And not one supervising officer would wake up the few guys that were dozing off. And they were only standing guard for 3 days. It's not like they were out there for 6 months. And they just, nothing's going to happen. They would have been on high alert. But they paid the Roman officers for them to share this testimony. But we know it was a bribe because the gospels say, but we also can use logic to know that it was a bribe because those men weren't put to death. Interesting. They didn't have to pay the penalty with their life because their officials were also paid off to keep those guys alive so they could spread their lie. And so if it wasn't the disciples stealing their body as this lie would be propagated, how do we know that Jesus came back to life? Where is his body? That's the million-dollar question. You see, the disciples were eyewitnesses of the resurrected Lord. It says that Jesus appeared to them on multiple occasions, but it wasn't just to his closest followers. At one time, it says that Jesus appeared to over 500 people at one time. And he appeared to hundreds of people before he ascended into heaven after his resurrection. So when Paul is writing to the Corinthian church in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, he's talking about the resurrected Lord and the validity of that. He says, listen, if you don't believe me, just go ask them. There's still hundreds of eyewitnesses alive today that you can go and talk to. But not only were there eyewitnesses alive, but those eyewitnesses turned martyrs. For what they knew to be true, they saw Jesus Christ. And so they were willing to be burned at the stake, being burned alive, to be dipped in boil, to be stoned to death, to be fed to lions, and your body to be torn apart and watching your children have to go before you. They all went through death and were willing to go through whatever circumstances would come their way because they knew one thing: Jesus is alive. And you can kill this body, you can destroy this flesh, but I know just as Jesus was resurrected to life, we are promised to be in new life with Christ in heaven. So you can destroy this body, you can kill this body, you can come against this body, but you can't steal my belief in Jesus Christ. They couldn't stop it. They couldn't keep it. So how do I know? Well, you see hundreds of people willing to die without one saying, guys, it's made up. Not one disciple of Jesus facing being boiled or facing crucifixion upside down like Peter. Not one said, you know what, guys, we've taken this too far. Listen, when the danger of Watergate came in, all sorts of people started flipping and telling different stories and coming out with the truth to save their own necks. But not one disciple said, listen, okay, this is taking it too far. Don't kill my family. I'm not dying for this lie. You know, who's going to be willing to die for a lie? Who's willing to say, you know what, you can kill my family and myself. Well, we're all willing to die for this lie. No, someone along the way would say, this has gone too far. Listen, we took the body. We got some new alien technology. We wiped out all 64 guards with nothing. And they just passed out. You know, they're not hurt. They're not, but they just passed out because we have this technology now. And we put them all to sleep. We stole the body. We rolled the stone away without waking any of them up, because they were sleeping, right? And so we took a 2-ton stone, rolled it, and they didn't hear it, although they were laying right next to it. They didn't hear it. And we stole the body, and we went and hid it somewhere else. Well, let me just show you where it's at. Not one. So we have the validity. If you can just think logically with me. You might say, well, listen, Pastor, every time you say he's alive, you just use the Bible. Think logically with me. Hundreds of people are willing to give their lives for something that they knew to be true. So you have witnesses turn martyrs. Secondly, you have skeptics turn believers. You have atheists. You have agnostics. You have people that do not believe in Jesus at all and want nothing to do with Jesus. Then Jesus appears to them and their life is radically changed. You have James, the half-brother of Jesus. James, who was Jesus' little brother, who was Mary and Joseph's son, grew up with Jesus. He would, if anyone would know the inside story on Jesus, it would be James. Like Inquirer magazine would go to James, hey, tell us about Jesus. Tell us the secret story. Tell us about that time that Jesus went to Cancun. Tell us about this. What was Jesus like in his early days? What was he like when he was in college? You know, James would know, and James did know. If anyone would say, I'm not going to believe in Jesus because I know it's all a lie, it would be James. But although James didn't believe in Jesus initially, John tells us that in his gospel, that James wasn't a follower of Jesus. I don't really blame James. Could you imagine growing up in Jesus' home? Your parents, you're the little brother of Jesus, who's perfect. And now you're always getting into trouble. And you never see your brother get in trouble, not once. Now you're getting disciplined, and your parents sit you down. Come on, James. Can't you just be a little bit more like Jesus? Can't you just be a little bit more like your big brother? And not only the pressure from his parents, but could you imagine the pressure from his peers? Hey, James, the last party that Jesus was at, he turned those 5 jars to wine. You think you could hook a brother up? No, man, I can't do that. Oh, we like Jesus more. I don't blame James for resenting Jesus, whatever reason. He didn't believe in Jesus. But then James was one that saw the resurrected Lord, and he went from not being a follower of Jesus to being a leader in the early church there in Jerusalem, to leading the church that Jesus established. He knew about Jesus. He heard Jesus' teachings. And just like maybe some of you today, maybe consider yourself an agnostic or an atheist, or maybe not even that, but you've heard Jesus' teachings, you believe in the teachings of Jesus, but you haven't become a believer in yourself of Jesus. You haven't yet yourself personally said, I follow Jesus Christ. And so James, his life was radically transformed. But not only James, we see a man named Saul in the book of Acts. Saul, who was one of the religious leaders that would have been a part of the religious group that put Jesus to death. And now Saul is spending every ounce of energy he has to try to extinguish and put out the fire that's spreading of Christianity that's spreading out throughout the world. So Saul has papers that give him the power to track Christians down and find out who are the Christians and then put them to death. We saw Saul being the one that was holding the coats of the people when Stephen was stoned to death in Acts chapter 6. That was Saul, who was hunting Christians down and killing them because he was trying to stop the work of Jesus Christ. But on a road to Damascus, the resurrected Lord appeared to Saul. Saul was literally knocked off of his high horse. From the bright light that shone from the face of God, Saul went blind. But God later sent Ananias to pray over him. Saul was healed, recommissioned into ministry, now no longer one that's killing Christians, but a Christian himself. Now one that's traveling the world telling people that Jesus is real. And he went back to the religious leaders, his family, his countrymen, his comrades. And he goes to them and he says to them, listen, you know who I was. The validity of Jesus Christ is this. I was a Christian killer. But I saw Jesus Christ and he changed my life forever. Here's the validity of Jesus Christ today. You want to know, is Jesus alive? Look at my life. Look at the lives of people around you. Horrible people that were doing horrible things. But because of the blood of Jesus Christ, he took our lives. He met us on the road to destruction. And he changed us forever. There is no greater validity of Jesus Christ and the power of God than a changed life. And you're looking at a room full of people whose lives have been changed. You're looking at people who are no longer the same person. It doesn't mean that we're perfect. No, we still mess up. We're still human. We still fail. But our lives are being changed day by day by the power of Jesus Christ. So we see skeptics turn believers, and the last and final evidence is the empty tomb. How do we know that Jesus is alive, that he came back from the dead? How do we know he's not like all the other religions? I'll tell you why. Because you can visit the Kushanara, which is built over Buddha's ashes, where his remains are still kept. You can visit the Sankan, where Confucius's bones are laid. You can visit the Al-Madinah, which holds Muhammad's grave, where he is still buried. But if you go to the tomb of Jesus Christ, it is empty. He is alive. Death could not hold him. The grave could not keep him. The evidence in the early church was this. Go look for yourself. Go see it. I saw it. Could you imagine? The women come back from the tomb and Jesus is alive. Jesus is alive. Oh, no, ladies, you know. And they go, well, let's go check this out. Peter, John, run over there. They find out. Just the two of them go. But there's a whole group of people locked in. We got to tell them they come back. He's just it's a tomb's empty. He's alive. What would they say? Go look for yourself. And the invitation that the angel gave to those two women is the same invitation I want to give to you now. The evidence is there. And that's just a few of the things. We could spend weeks, and you're saying, please don't, Pastor. We could spend the next 12 hours looking at the evidence. You're saying, I'm hungry. But there's a lot more evidence. But just to give it to you in a summarization form, Jesus is alive. There's irrefutable evidence. Skeptics turn believers. Witnesses turn martyrs. Tombs turned over. Jesus is alive. But will you come and see? Will you come in and behold Jesus Christ for yourself? You see, that invitation is for you to realize that Jesus Christ is real and that he is alive. It's not fake news. It's not an April Fool's joke. The only April Fool's joke that took place that day was the April Fool's joke on Satan. He's dead. Jesus says, April Fools, no, I'm not. Hashtag April Fools. Hashtag the tomb is empty. But the invitation, the stone has been rolled away for you to be able to realize. In other words, Jesus is inviting you today. Come and experience the resurrected Lord. And in the days in which we live, where there's fake news and bad news and divisive news and depressing news, beaming from the tomb is good news, which is the gospel. It's Jesus Christ and that he is alive, resurrected from the dead. By his stripes we are healed. By his death we can live. And because he came back to life, we too can join him in that life, a new life. It's about being born again.